And so if you don't want your image used, you can just keep your camera off. The photos may appear on WhatsApp. They may appear, your image may appear on YouTube, because sometimes when I record the videos, they record to YouTube. Actually, I don't know how I choose where they go. Sometimes they end up on YouTube and sometimes they end up on Zoom. So anyway, or they could end up in reports that Austin or I create, or maybe some of you. So just keeping that in mind. So in this evening's session, we will look at the benefits of using rubrics. We'll look at how to apply them, the application of using rubrics, and also creating and adapting rubrics. Also, we'll look at a couple different types as well. All right, so I wanted to do a check-in with you, as I often like to start out with. I have a poll for you. This poll is about the use of rubrics, so I can assess your background information and your experience in this area. So what is your experience with using rubrics? You can only choose one choice. I use them often, I use them sometimes, I've tried them a couple of times, or I've never used a rubric. So please go ahead and fill in the answer that best applies to you. I see a variety of answers here. Going to see if I can get 100% of people to answer the poll question. That has never happened before. Oh, but we're close. 10 out of 12 of you have participated in the poll. 11 out of 12. There's one missing person. Oh, it might be me. Oh, no, we have now 11 of 13. Because I think we had some people joining in. Oh, we have more people joining and more people doing the poll. Excellent. Give it about 10 more seconds. Oh, we have quite a variety of answers. Very interesting. 85% of you have participated in the poll. Only 2 of you have not. This is the best participation in a poll so far. All right, so I'll share the results with you. And it looks like we're all over the place. A couple of you use them often. The biggest group uses them sometimes, but that's only 4 of you. 3 of you have tried a couple of times, and then 3 of you have never. So basically half of you have basically experience with rubrics, and half of you have little to no experience with rubrics, which is fine. It's good to know where you all are at. So those of you who have experience with rubrics, I would love if you would share your experience either by raising your hand to speak or speaking in the chat. What did you use your rubric for? What were you assessing? Did you find it useful? Were there any issues? And if you've never used a rubric, I would also love to hear why you have not. So anyone who is willing to share their ideas, either through chat or by raising their hand, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And Lorian, I love that you have brought a friend in with you and that you are watching together.
Definitely, I know. I will bring somebody invited, then we come together.
That's awesome.
I think it can really continue with, if it is okay, that when it comes to rubrics, it's an amazing topic for me. And with my experience, I remember when I started using rubrics was like, because I had the issue with assessing competencies when we started the competence-based curriculum in Rwanda. And we were actually talking about developing teaching with competencies, knowledge, English knowledge and skills and attitude and values. And then we had in a moment to assess only ways of assessing English language knowledge in terms of like, for example, teaching grammar. That's much more what we used to teach through traditional ways. So when it comes to the transition from knowledge-based curriculum, which we have been going through so many years, and then we transition to competence-based curriculum and teaching English competence-based in a very competence-based way. So I was having questions of like, what can I use? So I was introduced to the idea of an ELF, who was back in years 2016, and there was a new concept called Rubrics. It was new to my mind, and then when we only had a 2-hour session, so the next phase of the next course of teaching was for me to always learn about using Rubrics. So I found it even mostly easy to use and fine, even helping me to assess all of these competencies. I will even go for one rubrics for even special or competence. Like you go on detail and then you dig deeper to help some students develop each single competence. So find it easier rubrics to be used in almost every areas of English language teaching.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Florian. I think you brought up a lot of really good points there. When we're assessing competencies rather than just knowledge, rubrics are super helpful for that because we don't have objective black and white answers. And so how do we score things like that? So that's perfect. I also like your the description of your experience with rubrics, that it was something new to you, but there was also a little training, it sounds like, in how to use them. And I think that's important too. Once you know how to use them, they can seem quite easy, but if you don't know how to use them, they actually can be misused as well. So those are really some good points. In the chat, Lillian says, I've used a rubric while assessing functional writing skills. Good, so that would be like competencies. It worked really well because it was easy for me to score, and I felt this provided a level playing ground besides enabling me to note the learning gaps. Yes, very good. I think you've touched on a lot of the benefits there, Lillian. It's easy to score, so that really makes things better for us as teachers in our time. A level playing ground so that we have kind of an objective standard to assess all students from, and clear and easy to see learning gaps because you have them kind of on this grid, and easy for students to see their gaps as well. Thank you. Those are great answers. All right, I'm going to move on because I don't see any other hands up or anything in the chat, but we can always return to this. I will say that I had seen rubrics early on in my career with like kind of formalized tests, such as the TOEFL, but I didn't really appreciate how useful they were. It just seemed kind of like a marking grid to me. And then later on, I was working in an academic language center, and we came out with new writing standards because our students were passing writing, but they were terrible writers. So we needed a way to kind of create some consistency, a level playing ground, as Lillian said. And so rubrics were created and introduced, and we're trained on how to use them. It was really, really helpful to me. All right, so why should we use rubrics? What are the benefits? Why are people always talking about rubrics? So this was brought up by Lillian. Less time is spent grading when we use a rubric. We have increased practicality. There are a couple reasons for that. Yes, very good, Rukia, in assessing activities, right? Something where they're doing something productive or competence-based. Very good. So two kind of components of why rubrics help us save time. For one thing, it limits the focus of assessment. If we're assessing an activity, or we're assessing writing, or we're assessing competencies, there's about 1 million things that we can be assessing. spelling, punctuation, cohesion, coherence, organization, content of ideas, level of vocabulary, use of vocabulary, variety of vocabulary, number of words, handwriting, formatting, and on and on and on and on. When we have a rubric, we focus what we're going to assess. We cannot assess everything. We'll go crazy if we try to mark everything. So this helps us to kind of focus in. And then it provides ready-made descriptors. So we can just read the descriptions, decide which one best matches what we're looking at, and go from there. So the decision process is easier. We don't have to write down, we can just circle the score, and we don't have to write, I gave you a 10 because you blah, 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 blah. We just circle, and the description is there along with the score, if we're using scores. Talk about that level playing field. We have greater consistency between students' scores because we have the established norms, established objectives. So this increases rate of reliability. So if we're tired when we're looking at some students' work, but in a good mood when we look at others, or if there's a student we really, really like and a student we really don't like, a rubric helps us to be more objective because we have to identify with one of the descriptors. It's not perfect, but it's much better than if we have no assessment tool at all. When we use rubrics, we have clear feedback on strengths and weaknesses, and therefore increased washback. So students are automatically given feedback. Even if we don't write anything else on the rubric, they automatically are getting feedback about strengths and weaknesses that is verbal, not just a score. They're getting a description of what they did well and something that describes what they didn't do well. Another benefit is we get less complaining from the students, both before the assignment and after the assignment. When an assignment is unclear or what the standards or expectations are unclear, we get students complaining, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Or after you turn the assessment back, why did I get this grade? What did I do wrong? I don't understand. We have less of that because we have increased transparency through using rubrics. Yes, thank you for adding that, Rukia. It also reduces the anxiety with students because they see clearly what constitutes a good grade. And if I don't do all of these things, then this is the grade I can expect. Excellent. So yes, the expectations are clear and the reasons for the score are clear. So we have transparency both on the front and the back end, which is useful for everyone. And finally, rubrics are very adaptable. So I think this was touched on by Lorian about it being used for any sort of competency-based learning, competency-based assessment, any kind of productive work, such as activities. Not so useful for receptive skills like reading and listening. I'm not saying it's impossible, you definitely could, but definitely very useful for productive work, speaking, writing, creating posters, books, stories, projects, all of those kinds of things. Portfolios, a lot of the those alternative assessments we talked about in our last meeting. Yes, and there are ways for students to collaborate and connect. Very good. All right, so kind of the basics for using a rubric. So first thing, we want to make sure that the rubric aligns with the assignment. So here we see the kind of the categories that are being assessed. And so, for example, we see here use of sources. So we want to make sure if we use this rubric, are students using sources? So maybe they're doing some sort of research paper. So looking at the content, and then also, well, we'll get into this. We want to look at kind of these descriptors here. So we see that here we have 4 levels of achievement. This high level, still high, okay, and kind of a low level of achievement here. And we want to make sure that these descriptions also match our assignment. So we hear that there are interesting and relevant arguments that are well supported. So it looks like this is for some sort of argumentative paper. We want to make sure that that is, in fact, what the assignment is. So we want to make sure there's a match between our rubric and assignment. So either if we're looking online for rubrics that are ready made, if we're adapting them or we're creating them ourselves, or if we're recycling old rubrics we've used, we want to make sure that they're still applicable to whatever we're doing. So then once we make sure that this is the right rubric we want to use, we want to choose the description that most closely matches the student's performance. So when I look at the student's paper, if it's organized the way that it should be, like with introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, all of that, and then I can give it a 7. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but that mostly clear, it's more than mostly clear. Maybe it's almost perfect. Right? So it doesn't have to exactly match. Something that we should not do when using rubrics is we should not choose in the middle. We should either choose the higher category or the lower category, but we shouldn't be choosing in the middle. When we choose in the middle, we're adding more subjectivity, we're reducing some of the objectivity, and kind of second guessing ourselves. And we're losing some of the practicality as well. When we start thinking, oh, is it this or this? Oh, maybe in the middle, maybe kind of in the middle. Just choose. It is nice, especially if you don't have 70 students in your class, if you can add additional comments that are more specific to that student, that can be very helpful. Maybe the description in the rubric doesn't quite cover something that you really think the student needs to know about their work. And it's also nice, if possible, to offer a final comment, just to give it a little bit more personalization. If you have 70 students, maybe don't do that. But if you're working with 30, you probably can manage to, or if they're working in groups, you can probably manage to do that. So this would be an example of a final comment that lets the student know you have really actually looked at their paper. And also make sure your students know how to read a rubric. I remember the first time I passed back rubrics to students that I was working with in Uzbekistan. They had never seen it. They did not understand what it was I had given them. I'd given them this chart with some circles and some comments, and they did not know how to read it. So make sure your students know how to read a rubric before giving it back to them. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to you. You're going to have a chance to apply a rubric. So let's imagine there's this assignment. It is to create a banner for Education Day. So probably students are working in groups. The banner should contain a message or quote related to learning, and students will be assessed on the message itself, the correct use of language, and the visual presentation of the banner. We have here the rubric. So here we have the content. So the message is inspiring and directly really connected to learning would be a high score. A middle score, the message is inspiring, but it's not directly connected to learning, or the message is not inspiring and not connected to learning. That's a problem. The next category we have is language. A really good example will have no errors in grammar, vocabulary, spelling, or punctuation because it's a banner. So we want it to be pretty perfect. Normally, I don't ask for perfection, but it's a banner. People are going to see it, so I want it perfect. If there are some errors, but we can still understand the message, that would be here. And if the errors are so bad, we can't really understand the message, that's here. And then finally, I don't usually grade presentation, but in this instance I am. So because it's a banner, we want it to be visually appealing and easy to read. If it's not bad, then it's visually appealing, but maybe a little bit hard to read. And then if it needs work, it's not visually appealing and or it's difficult to read. If you need to see this better, maybe it's not clear to you, I have put this image into your into the WhatsApp. So you can find this image in WhatsApp and you can zoom in as needed. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and you'll be there for about 3 minutes. You're going to use this rubric to give a grade to the banner that you see up above. So you'll decide what you think about this banner. There's 3 to 4 participants in your room, so you should have plenty of chance to talk. Please do join the breakout room. If you get kicked out, I'll be out here to put you back in. I'm opening up the breakout rooms. I'll give you about 3 minutes to work in your group using this rubric to assess the banner on the top according to the assignment as listed there. If you need to, you can also see this in your WhatsApp, and I'll share it in the groups too. Okay, I can see everybody's coming back in.
Present somewhere, I'm not known.
Okay, and I see I've got some hands up already. All right, Josiah, your hand shot right up. Sorry, I did mute everybody, but Josiah, go ahead and share. What room are you in? What room are you speaking for?
Well, imagine I didn't check the room. Probably I can ask Karin to tell me the room I was in, or three.
Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Could I just present?
Yes.
Okay, fine. The from your screen, there's some content which has disappeared from the screen that you had.
There we go.
Okay, good. There it is. Thank you. So we checked that rubric, the message that the banner the student wrote, and first we look at we started the language. The language learning is knowledge acquired in small portions. It drops make the rivers flow. The flow should be that the spelling is wrong. And then again, learning is knowledge acquired in small portions as drops make. I think there should be a comma somewhere. If I'm not, learning is knowledge acquired in small portions as there. So for language, because of that spelling mistake and maybe punctuation, full stop somewhere at the end probably. So now we gave 5. We said not bad, not. Yeah, we gave the students that, but then in terms of presentation, is it visually appealing? It's visually appealing and easy to read according to us, because you can see the whole thing, the letters are in capital, and the mixture of colors depends with somebody, the color somebody like. I like red and blue. So I think they're appealing to my eyes and to the members we are with. Then now, in terms of content, the content is also appealing. It is inspiring and directly connected to the learners, to the learning. Probably 7 or so can do. But again, there's nothing between 7 and 5. So we gave 7. And the use of rhyming words. The rivers that flow to the oceans. So there. So I think that's how we graded ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
okay, okay. Oh, sorry. Unfortunately, I have to speak in every test. Thank you.
It's always
Okay.
nice to hear your voice. And your audio is very good tonight, Josiah, as well. So that's nice to hear you
Thank you.
clearly.
Okay.
So thank you for explaining your group's logic and why you arrived at the score that you arrived at. Very good. Lillian, you've got your hand up. Do you did your group come up with something different or similar? Please share.
Thank you, Mina. I hope I'll be audible enough. Group came up with something slightly different in terms of content, which has been learning. It was not connected to learning. And therefore, in that case, we awarded that prize. Then, in terms of language, we have so many errors that make the message difficult to understand. So we equally gave a try. And lastly, in terms of presentation, the poster is a bit crowded and it's not visually appealing. In as much as the predecessor will say that it was appealing, but to us, it was not so much appealing. And we decided to give a 3 in all the areas because in your presentation you had said that when you're dealing with a rubric, you don't award the middle mark, you either do the extreme excellent or the extreme low scores. So that is why we gave a 3 in all the areas. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. I messed up. So in the first area also you have a 3. So we see a very different approach to grading, which is not a problem. I will say if we were a group of teachers and we were all going to be grading together and then averaging the score, what we would do is we would do some practice grading together to kind of make sure that we were looking at things in a more similar way before we move on. For this, we don't need to, but it gives us a nice example of how different teachers can look at something even when we are using a rubric. It is also possible that if, I don't know, something wonderful happened to Lillian and then she came back and looked at this, she might think, oh, actually, it's not so bad. And she might give it a higher grade, or same with Josiah. So rubrics don't completely eliminate the subjectivity, but they do make it a little better. Does anyone else want to share? And while you are doing that, I'm going to find my mouse. My mouse disappeared as I was doing this. Ah, there it is. Okay. Any different ideas anybody wants to share? We see kind of a big difference between Lillian's room and Josiah's room, I think, which doesn't make either one right or wrong. They just have different views. Unfortunately, this was a real banner in a real classroom, but it was not made by students. It was made by administration. All right, so there are many ready-made rubrics out there, fortunately for us. And so we don't have to necessarily create our own. We can go into the internet and find ones that are already made. Or it's possible that your administration or curriculum materials will provide rubrics. For example, earlier I talked about how the writing curriculum at my school changed and they provided rubrics to go with that change. Or if you're doing, I don't know, for example, some sort of test prep that comes with a textbook, the textbook may include its own rubric as well. You can also go online and use apps such as this. Teachersfirst.com has all types of rubrics in it. If you Google rubrics, writing rubrics, rubrics for skits, rubrics for speaking, rubrics for book reports, anything, you will find rubrics. But then the drawback of getting a ready-made rubric is maybe it's not exactly what you want, which is why there are also ready-made ones that you can adapt. A nice example would be Ruby Star for Teachers, has ready-made rubrics, but you can change the descriptions and categories on them to meet your own needs, which I think is a very nice thing to be able to do. And then you can also make your own rubrics. You can use different apps or programs online to help you, or I usually make my own rubrics just using Microsoft Word. So let's look at a couple of these. I'm going to stop sharing this screen so that I can pull up a couple of these websites here. Okay, this is that Teachers First website. It has all kinds of things, and you do need to sign in to use this. But it, for example, here are a bunch of the rubrics that they have, and notice that this is just one of 9 pages of rubrics. So they have tons and tons of rubrics on this page. Next up, have a look at Ruby Star, which I have used before. I hadn't used the previous one. All right, so Ruby Star has a bunch of different rubrics. You can find a rubric or you can create a rubric. Let's just see what they have here. So you can search for, example, okay, not that way. Or perhaps it is my internet. Okay, so here is an example of a lot of the rubrics I have here. So oral projects like a class debate or interview. If your students make a brochure or a poster, different multimedia kinds of things, research and writing, and then even things that are not even related to English. So for example, let's look at interview. Oh, except I have to sign in. So we will not do that. All right, the next thing we're going to do is make our own rubric. This other website, I think I also have to sign into, but is kind of a blank. And all you need to do is basically fill in the boxes, which makes it pretty easy. Okay, so here, I often just make rubrics myself using Microsoft Word. So I open one of these, and then I'm going to create a chart or insert a chart. So we need to decide how many categories. Which should we assess? Writing, speaking, a poster? Any ideas? Go ahead, Josiah.
I would prefer writing, but at least you can have something common to view.
Oh, well, Nancy agrees with you. Nancy M says she also wants to do writing. All right, so we're going to do writing, and Margot agrees as well. All right, what things should we be assessing here? Content? Go ahead, Josiah.
Sorry, I was trying to put my hand down, but anyway.
But it went up again.
Language, content. I think, yes, I have those two.
Okay, language and content.
Punctuation,
Okay,
is it part of it?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have content, language, and then we have to decide, do we want to separate grammar and vocab? For this, we'll do, let's see here, we'll do content, language, we'll do grammar, vocab, punctuation, and organization. Oops. And for this, I'm going to do maybe 4 groups. So it takes a little bit of planning ahead. So if I'm going to have content, grammar, vocab, punctuation, organization, that's 5. Then I actually need 6 spaces, and then excellent, very good, okay, and needs work. All right. Okay, so I put in my my box here. I'm going to have content. Oops, not there. Content, grammar, punctuation, and organization. And then here, so this would be my high category. So in each box, I would describe exactly what kind of content I'm looking for. Maybe original ideas with clear examples, very few grammar mistakes, and none of them interfere with comprehension. Vocabulary that is varied, words are spelled correctly. Maybe with punctuation, no mistakes with punctuation. And then organization uses essay format, has a clear introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusions. And so I would describe what's perfect. And then I would describe what's almost perfect. And then the next one, and then something that really has a lot of mistakes. And we'll go through like this. I usually like to have one extra set of boxes here so I can add any kind of comments to it. All right, so we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so we looked at all of these. And then something else that's nice with rubrics is, especially if it's something that's being done for formative assessment, you might consider involving your students in creating the rubric. That way, they really can't complain about what's being assessed because they come up with the ideas and they decide for themselves what they think makes a really high quality piece of work, as opposed to what kind of problems might be in there. And so it can be really learner-centered, collaborative process. All right, so when we're creating rubrics, we do have some things we want to think about. As you saw, as we were creating a rubric, what will be the areas of your assessment? I find that usually 4 to 6 categories is enough. I have seen rubrics that have like 10 categories, 10 different things that are being assessed, but I really just think that that is too much. Even if we think about the IELTS test, it has 4 categories for everything. For example, for writing, it has a part about ideas, a part about organization, a part about vocabulary, and a part about grammar. And that really is enough to look at. When you have more than 6 areas, it starts to lose some of the practicality that we try to achieve through rubrics. Then we need to have descriptions of the achievement levels. So we want to make sure to have nice, clear, and specific descriptions, because that is what provides the feedback to our students. If you just write excellent job, that really doesn't tell students what they did well at. So while it can take a little work to create the rubric, then when you use it to grade, you have a lot less work to do. And then generally, we want to use positive language in the rubric. We don't want to have a box that says awful, terrible, right? We want to have something more constructive. If you are using your rubric for something that is graded or summative, then you will need to think about scoring. If you're using it for something that is formative, then you can just be using it for feedback. But you have to be careful if you are using it for scoring. Let's look at an example. So if we look at this example, everything in this first area, if a student does everything well, this will add up to 100 points. I'm not sure how you do grading here in Kenya, but in the US, usually we do things out of 100. 100% is considered very good. And then usually 90 is considered the next kind of tier, and then 80. But I know it's very different in different countries. Following that, if we add these up, if a student does standard, then and they get all standard grades, then they will probably get an 80. I believe this adds up to 80, and 80 is considered a standard grade. Most students will end up in different areas. If we add these up, these are below standard, then it won't be a horrible grade, but it won't be a standard grade. So this will be about a 70 or lower. And then we see that these are just all zeros here. Normally, we don't see that on a rubric. Usually we see lower grades for this. But scoring is really something to consider. If we look back at this other rubric that I showed you, not this one. Oh, too many animations here. This one. If a student does everything perfectly, it adds up to 21. So in this assessment, a 21 is a perfect grade. If they do everything not bad, that's a 15. So we need to make sure that 15 correlates to an okay grade. And so we have to be careful when assigning the points. Personally, in my experience, I found that points in rubrics is one of the most difficult things. We can have something that's standard at the top, or we can do it like in this other one, where these different areas are weighted differently. So we can see in this rubric, grammar carries a lot of weight. Spelling carries a lot of weight, more than these other areas, which have lower points. One other thing I'll mention, a rubric is nice if you're assessing group work. If the whole group is working together, they can share these categories, but then you might have one category where each student is assessed individually. So that's something else we can do to deal with group work. Just to give these their proper labels, these are the categories of assessment. So what is being assessed? These are the levels of achievement. So here they're called above standard, standard, below standard. You might see something where it says excellent, very good, good, needs work. It's never going to say anything like horrible, terrible. And then we have the descriptions of achievement. So if it achieves this level, what does it look like? And that's where we want to be very specific, both for ourselves to make the grading easier and also to make the feedback more specific. And then if you are using a score, we see the scores here, although you saw earlier, the scores can be just set in the top there. There's an area here for teacher to add other comments to individualize this a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to you. you and your groups, I'm going to change up the groups here a little bit. You are going to create or adapt a rubric. So in your group, you are going to determine what you're assessing. Are you assessing writing? And if you're assessing writing, are you assessing a paragraph, an essay, a journal? Are you assessing something spoken like a dialogue or speech? Are you assessing a poster? What is it that you're going to assess? An activity? Choose between 3 to 5 areas of assessment in the interest of time. Maybe in real life you would choose more areas, but for this, you're just going to choose 3 to 5 areas. And you're going to create some descriptions for each level of performance. What does an excellent example look like? What does a good example look like? What does a not so good example look like? If you're using points, then you will assign points, but you don't have to. And then in your group, you'll choose 1 or 2 people to present your rubric. For making the rubric, you have those websites that I showed you. One person can open the website and share their screen. From your phones or computer, you have an option to share your screen. You could use Microsoft Word like I used or something similar to share the screen, or the Google form of that. Or you can write everything down on a piece of paper and you can show us like this. Or you can take a picture of it and send it in the WhatsApp group and I can upload it onto Zoom. So you'll have one person who's kind of the computer person who's going to be either writing on a piece of paper, using Microsoft Word, or using one of the apps that I shared with you. All the links to the apps are in WhatsApp. I have sent them to you already. And also this, this slide is also in WhatsApp. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to work in your groups. It's not enough time to finish making your rubric, but it's enough time to get started and to think about what goes into a rubric. So again, you can use one of the apps, you can use Microsoft Word, or you can use regular pen and paper to create your rubrics, but you need to make some decisions first about what you're assessing, what you're going to focus on in the assessment, and creating the descriptions for each level. Are there any questions? I see something in the chat. Oh, good. Thank you, Margot. Margot has shared some examples with us on WhatsApp, so this will help us a lot. Thank you very much. That was very considerate. All right, I think I have recreated your rooms, so they're a little bit different. You'll see some different people in those rooms. If you have any trouble, you have that option of asking for help, and I will come to your room and help you. You can also message me on WhatsApp. If you don't know how to share to the group, you can share it in WhatsApp.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, I think we've got everybody back. And I have stopped sharing my screen so that you all can share yours. So we have, I think, 5 rooms. Do we have a room that wants to volunteer to go first? And I understand that you are definitely not finished. I don't expect any completed rubrics, but I am curious to see what we have. Just so I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, my mic was mute. Now, I was in group 2. This time I'm sure of the group.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was with Rukia, Mandela, and Stephen.
Great.
Definitely, we're not done with the drawing, with the work, because we agreed to prepare a poster, and this poster, the students are supposed to come up with a message, advertising. It's a message that will be having an event extravaganza at the end of the term, music extravaganza, and they were supposed to use clear language. So in the poster, we were checking the language used, then we check we were checking content and visual, I forgot the last part. Lillian will assist me. Then we were able to plan verbally. We said that the grammar or the message should be relevant to music, to the extravaganza, not now learning or anything else, but it should have some words towards music. And the language, we're checking pronunciation, grammar, and so forth. So Lillian is coming up with something she's going to post, but I'll ask her to add something before she posts. Lillian, welcome.
I like this. You're doing an ad and it's related to music. Very creative.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We did come up with the areas that have been presented. So we had 3 categories. An excellent score would carry 9 marks. Then the middle score was labeled as very good, and it would go for 7 marks.
You're cutting out a little bit. We have lost you.
I think I can still assist what you're saying. She's saying that exact mark was going at 9 marks points, then 7 for very good, then good was supposed to be 5 marks. So we are locating that. So
the lowest score as good, and we give it
sorry for the confusion. Thank you. So that is it. I think Lillian is breaking.
hi. Hi. Sorry, I dropped off. I passed a place where there is no connection. Just gonna share the.
Oh, you were loud and clear, Lillian, and then it.
So sorry, I was traveling. Let me just share the rubric.
Okay.
Mina, just go on. I'll share on WhatsApp. I'm just taking a shot. Kindly.
Okay, it's on WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you. I'm posting it on WhatsApp, so you can just proceed with the other presentations as I do that.
Okay, gotcha. When it comes in, then I will load it. Okay, thank you. All right, Margot, you said that your group 5, room 5 is ready. So you or whoever from room 5, would love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Now, for us, we came up with the strand which shows reading, writing, and listening. Then we looked at comprehension. So for the comprehension, the 3 to 5 areas that we looked at was pronunciation, to know whether each learner will pronounce the words well. Then there was vocabulary, where we have new words. So with the new words, they can form sentences and get explanation, maybe from the teacher. Then we have grammar. In the grammar, we looked at the punctuation marks. In the comprehension, maybe you're giving a story, maybe there's an astonishment. That person should be able to show that it happened that way. Then now when it came to the ratings, we followed the medium, a high, medium, and low. For high, we gave a 3, which we took it to 100%. Then for medium, we gave a 2, which went to 60%, depending on the learner's ability to be able to perform. Then on the lower one, we gave 30%, 1 point as the ratings. Seth, maybe you can add something that I've not mentioned. Seth?
Yes, please. I wanted to add something on, particularly on punctuation. In most cases, what we were looking at, punctuation will go hand in hand to some level with pronunciation. Like if there is some interjection somewhere, the teacher would be able to assess if the learner has really used interjection in a sentence or a statement, comma, full stop. In the process of pronunciation, in the process of reading, the teacher can be able to judge whether the learner has used the punctuations correctly. So as he scores, you are able to understand the pronunciation because the teacher will also have a text. As a learner probably is reading, the teacher is also reading the text and is able to understand that such and such a learner has not used punctuation marks correctly. That is what I wanted to add on, particularly on pronunciation in relation to punctuation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Margot and Seth. So it looks like you guys put a lot of thought into this, into what to assess and the points. I'm curious, so you're assessing reading or writing?
You're assessing reading, writing, and listening.
Okay, so I like that. With a rubric, you are going to assess one specific assignment. You can have different rubrics for these different things, but we can't assess everything. So we can't use a rubric to assess a student's entire ability. So if you are doing reading and you mentioned pronunciation, then I would say that maybe you're assessing a student reading aloud. So when they're reading aloud, are they pronouncing words? Are they pronouncing, can we hear the punctuation correctly? Maybe we're also listening to for like kind of rhythm and intonation if there's a question in the reading. So we would be assessing a specific performance of this. So that's something to keep in mind. But I like the thought that has gone into it. Thank you, room 5. Lauren, I see you have your hand up. Which room are you representing? Do you know?
Yeah, Amina, just a minute, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say something on actually what we were doing. We looked at 4 skills, and because we could not approach all of them, we said that we'll concentrate only on reading as a skill. And that is why the element of pronunciation and a bit of reading, actually it's reading aloud. The comprehension is reading aloud.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
Reading aloud, we narrowed down out of the 4 skills of listening and speaking, reading and writing, we narrowed down to reading alone. Yeah, out of the 4 skills. So that is what we were assessing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's much clearer. Thank you for explaining that. All right, go ahead, Lorian.
Thank you so much. I'm representing group 3. We are with Nancy, Lobina, Carolina, and me. So we chose to work on creating a poster, but a poster will be for student choice to choose on whatever theme they want to create a post on. So we chose the criteria, 5 criteria, but I categorized them in 2 because we're gonna focus more on language accuracy and also checking the content, but also checking the language knowledge in terms of vocabulary development. So the poster will be focusing on mostly on content, where we'll be able to check on the relevancy, the information weight, even the impact that the content we have on the audience. And then we can also focus on the vocabulary, especially on word choice and even the inference that is made, which is connected to the content. So and that's where the weight of the language, I mean the proficiency and the language knowledge where we focus. But only also want to see if they can make a very clear language. In terms of grammar, we're gonna check on accuracy, especially sentence structure. And then the spelling also is there, and the punctuation. So we have 5 criteria: grammar, vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, and contents. So we also wanted to categorize, put them into, the standard, or put them in grades. So we have 5 grades or 5 standards. There is excellent, which is above. It is very good, good, and there is so-so, and they also need improvement. However, grammar has the most excellent point, the highest on the merit points, which is above, is 8. Vocabulary is 10, and spelling is 7. Punctuation is 5, and the content is 10. So the overall points for the whole work, it is 35. 15, no, 30, sorry. No, 35, yes, it's 35. Students will be able to create the poster out of 35 points. And here we were about to choose whether we need to add the outline on each criteria of what they have to go for, or if we can add the descriptors within every standard, or we can even, we probably want to choose even to use the pictures as the descriptors, and then we choose to add the some key area, key important points, items for each criteria, and then we'll be done with the rubrics, and then we share to the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. Something that struck me is how, when you're mentioning vocabulary, it seems like a specific focus, but you have an even more specific focus about word use. I think that's very interesting. Thank you. Excellent. So some of you may have seen in WhatsApp, we have some images coming in. Oops. First one, this one is from room 1. So we can see here rubric for a poster. We have visibility, grammar, and message. And we see they've used exceeding, meeting, approaching, and below. This is something, actually this wording is pretty common on rubrics. And we see some nice descriptors here so that we'll know exactly what to look for. Thank you, room 1. Or actually, sorry, I'm sorry. I'm looking at room 1, but you are looking at this one, sorry. So we see the aspects, we see excellent, very good, and something. Language, content, and visuals. We see this as a work in process, but we have some nice descriptions. The language is error-free in terms of spelling and grammar. So we see exactly what we're looking for here. Content message is inspiring and connected to entertainment. Very nice. And then the other one that I thought you were looking at, but only I was looking at, which would be this colorful one here, which is nicely done as well. With these, we see the content areas, we see the levels of achievement here, and then we see some nice descriptions in the boxes. Excellent. All right, I see some other hands up. No, I don't. Lorian, I don't know if you have something to add or your hand is still up. I thought I saw someone else's hand up.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
My hand was up.
Don't be
This is Nancy. My hand was up. But
oh, your hand was up.
The presentation. Yes.
Oh, Nancy, are you in room 1?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well then I'm sorry. I should have let you speak about yours. I've got it up
No
here.
problem. No problem. You did a good job.
Is there anything you want to add?
No, not really, except that we did not have time to do the scoring.
That's all right. And maybe
Yep.
you don't have a score. If you're doing this for formative assessment, maybe it's not necessary to have a score. So that's up to you. But I think the descriptions you have here are very clear.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I see something else has come in on WhatsApp. Ah, Margot has something for us. To see what it is that her and Seth were describing to us. It's a little bit blurry, but we can still, I think, get some idea here. Okay, so this is group 5's work here. I can see down here, we see the points. So this is high, medium, and low. And then we've got the pupils' names here. And so the teacher can keep track here. Very good. We've got vocabulary and pronunciation, another box here. Very nice. So yeah, I like this because we can see different examples, how we can keep this simple, we can make it complicated, depending on what our purposes are. Thanks all for sending those in. All right. Oh, I think it is time for us to be wrapping this up. Okay. So it is time for you to assess yourselves now. Actually, before you do that, I just wanted to show you a couple examples. So here, this would be a rubric that could be used by beginner level. We see that there's no kind of categories, and what we have here is very visual. If we did have categories, we would see that this is all about completion of work. This is correctness of work. This is the neatness of work, and then here is effort. But because they're little children, we don't see those categories here. And the descriptions of achievement are just kind of these faces. So students could use this to self-assess, even beginners or very young students. This is another example here. It doesn't have any descriptors. It's a bit more of a checklist here. So this would be for a paragraph writing here, topic, sentence, signal, transition, development, support, organization, and grammar. The teacher can just assign the points, and there's a space to add comments here. We see that these areas are weighted more because under here we see punctuation and concluding sentence, and they have very small points here. Now it is time for you to self-assess. So in the chat box or orally, you can just tell us where you are. Are you able to use rubrics, do you think? Are you almost there? Or is this something that you need a bit of help on? How do you feel about this topic of rubrics? This is a self-assessment. It is formative. And it is informal as well. Okay, we've got a thumbs up from Lillian, which is not surprising because she has clearly been making and working on rubrics, I think, because she's shared some of her lovely examples. Or actually, I'm sorry, those were Margot's examples, but Lillian shared the one that they made in their group. Rabina, you feel comfortable. Nancy's still working on this. Okay, you're not, it's not terrible, but you want a bit of extra help, which I think is very understandable. Very fair. Both Nancy's are feeling this way. Oh, and Jeffrey's feeling it with joy. Irene needs more work on this. If this is your first time coming across this, then that's definitely understandable. It's a lot of information thrown at you about rubrics. Irene, if you have a question, or either of the Nancys, something that can help you clear things up, or also Tiangu says, I'm almost there. You're welcome to ask here. You can also, we can continue this conversation on WhatsApp as well. It seems like we have a mix of people, more practice. Yeah, I think that's important, Irene. It's one thing to hear about it, see it, and then have 10 minutes to work in a group on it. But until you really get to try it out yourself, it's hard to say that you would feel comfortable. That's very good. Okay, just a couple messages from me. I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. We'll be looking at task and project-based learning, which I think are very fun and exciting. And we will also have, Nancy, I see scoring. The scoring part, I think, is the hardest part of this. And I have to say, I only realized how difficult it was when I really messed up doing a rubric and scoring. And students that did well, but not perfectly, were all getting low scores. And I realized it was because I had messed up the points. For now, I wouldn't worry too much about that. It was something I could fix. When I see you on Thursday, we will have a bonus presentation from Rukia Mohammed on a very interesting topic, which is trauma-informed practices in education. A very important topic, something that I don't know much about, so I'm really looking forward to this. Also, last week, Austin was talking about a lot of the benefits of joining LPAC. And he talked about the Open was taking applications. There are also free ones as well. So for example, Open is doing English for STEM, which is open to anyone. It is not the same thing that Austin was talking about, where you have, you're working directly with a teacher. This is a MOOC, so it's massive open online course. Hundreds to thousands of people will be taking it along with you at the same time. But a lot of you expressed interest in English for STEM when we talked about it before. So that is open. That's the QR code there. Also, if you look at this PowerPoint later, if you click on the picture, I embedded the link in the picture as well. Can we say that someone is a pro on creating rubrics? Is there any rubric that we can say is the best in the world? I would say no, because we have to, it has to be specific to the assignment. So if you give me an assignment, we could have a rubric contest and decide which is the best one, but there is no general rubric that is the best in the world. We all are in different circumstances with different things that we're assessing. But that is a good question, Lauren. Austin, do you have any messages or words for us before we wrap up?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I think you have done a good job today.
Thank you.
Mina, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to clarify on something for future reference. Now, can I actually say that a rubric is the same as a report card?
No, but that's a very interesting question. You may have a report card that looks like a rubric because it has those different things kind of checked about needs work, excellent, something like that. But a rubric would be specific to an assignment. If students had a debate, you would have a rubric specifically for that debate, or students are writing a letter about something, it would be specifically like that. And Margot, that's very important what you said, it's a record of progress as opposed to a report card, which is a clearly just summative. And a report card usually doesn't offer that much feedback and have that much description. It just says something like excellent or satisfactory on a student's general performance in areas like reading or writing, but not on a specific assignment. That's a great question, Carol. There are some similarities between them for certain.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you all have a nice evening. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. I'm excited about the topic I'm presenting on, and I'm also very excited about Rukia's topic as well. Nice to see you all. Thanks for your participation. I loved the rubrics that you created, taking the time and effort, and most importantly, I think the discussion that went along with it. Have a great night, everyone. See you Thursday.
You too. Bye.
Bye.